Hello, everyone. This is Brittany Samuelson with the Iowa After School Alliance, and I'm joined today for the Best Practices webinar with Community Youth Concepts, and they're going to give a presentation about their uVoice program. But before we get started with that, just a couple of reminders for the 21st Century Network. We have our Summer Institute in Council Bluffs this year on Friday, August 9th. So if you haven't registered for that yet, please do so. You are required to attend one of the regional institutes in either Council Bluffs or Dubuque, which will be in September. So make sure you get registered for one of those. And then for those of you who haven't done so already, please remember that Vic would like you to send your partnership list to him and I by the end of the month. So with that being said, those are all of my reminders. So I'll pass it over to Alicia with Community Youth Concepts.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today. We're really excited to be here to tell you more about our uVoice Youth Philanthropy Board program and talk about some of the youth leadership opportunities that we offer through uVoice. So you know who belongs to which voice as we're talking. My name is Alicia Vermeer. I'm the Office and Program Coordinator at Community Youth Concepts, and uVoice is one of the programs that I facilitate.
Hi, my name is Meghna Mallapan. I just graduated from Roosevelt High School this past year. I'll be going to Barnard College at Columbia University in New York, starting as a freshman, and I am one of the uVoice co-chairs, and I've been on the board for about 2 years now.
Hi, my name is Paige Kirschner. I am going to be a senior at Waukee High School this year. I am the other co-chair, and this will be my 4th and final year on the board.
Yes, Paige joined when she was a freshman and now is entering into her senior year. It's hard to believe. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what uVoice is, but then Paige and Meghna are really going to take the rest of the presentation away from there. So uVoice was founded in 2013 as a collaboration between Community Youth Concepts and the Mid-Iowa Health Foundation. And just last year, we were able to take some students to present at Delta Dental of Iowa. So we brought them on board last year for the first time as a second funder. So because both of the funders of the program are health-based entities, our uVoice board is also public health focused. So Paige and Meghna will talk a little bit about how the board is organized and run. But yeah, our only parameters that we give students for topics that they choose to focus on are that they are somehow public health focused and that they're issues that face children and youth specifically right here in Polk County and kind of the central Iowa area.
All right, so we're going to take you through what a cycle looks like for us over at uVoice. It starts early August, usually with the Iowa Youth Philanthropy Conference. So we get a group of our students together, depending on the year, depends on how many students will end up going, and we attend this conference with several other philanthropy groups from the state, and we attend breakout sessions and listen to presenters on different topics that might be relevant to us throughout the year. So it's a really great not only bonding experience for our team, but also a good icebreaker to the year, what our cycle is going to look like, what kinds of topics are relevant that year, and it's just a good opening activity for us.
So the next point, starting this year, we implemented something called a data walk that we learned about at the Philanthropy Conference. And essentially what we do with this is, obviously we can't pick one singular topic right away at the beginning of a cycle. So we, as a group, brainstorm about 30 to 40 topics that we think could be viable, things to focus on for the year. And then at that point, in order to narrow down our list a little bit, each member on our board gets assigned a topic, and it's a topic that we're not typically well versed with. We want to try to expand out of our comfort zones, and then we'll come back as a group and we'll all present the topic that we decided to pick. Past topics we've done are mental health, we've talked about environmental issues, things like that. And we'll come back together as a board and we'll present all the data and facts we found of how those issues affect youth in Polk County. And then from there, we move on to caucus.
So the caucus for a topic is exactly what it sounds like. It is very democratic. We make big posters on the wall with each of our topics. At this point, we've narrowed it down to maybe 4 or 5, sometimes 6, just general topics that we would be interested in really narrowing down and focusing on for the year. And we run around the room like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to figure out which topic has the most support from our group members. Our board is only 15 students at most, so we average about 4 people at each topic, and then once we've gone through, we'll discuss, okay, why do we feel like this topic is important, and try to convince others to maybe move to a different topic. And it's super duper helpful in narrowing down our specific topic. So this year we decided on human trafficking, and interestingly enough, that was one that started out with a lot of people in our caucus at that poster, but that's not always been the case. So last year was mental health and sexual health, which were 2 separate posters that ended up with even amounts of people in the end, and we just couldn't pick. They were 2 really fascinating topics that we thought we could do a lot with. So yeah, it all depends on the interest of the group.
Yeah, and then so when we finally decide on a topic, that takes about the first quarter of a year, we start going towards a community needs assessment. And essentially what that is during the data walk, we focus on more broad, general, big picture things of how, like statistics of how our issue affects teens and youth in Polk County. But at this point, we'd really like to get more into the specifics. So our community needs assessment is essentially a way for us to really dive into the problem and learn from people in the community. So in past years with things like mental health, sexual health, substance use and abuse, we've done surveys to high schoolers and in Polk County to really learn about like what they feel on the topic, because that's the most pertinent way we could get data. But this year with human trafficking, obviously a survey wasn't the easiest way to go, so we decided on an expert panel. And so we gathered experts in human trafficking from around the district, people focused like very different things in like law and people who did help with them, human trafficking victim traffic in nonprofits essentially. And then from that point, we had our expert panel, and then after our community needs assessment, we come back together as a group and we essentially talk about everything we've learned and what we really gathered from that. Like, what can I take away from this to move on to our next point?
That leads into our RFP, or request for proposals. So that is basically an application for organizations that we either have reached out to, or we also posted on our website. So if there's a group that we haven't considered but might be interested, they're absolutely welcome to apply. And the RFP consists of questions that we think are best tailored to determine why a specific organization needs the funding, what they would do with it. So in the past, they've been more or less specific to our topic, just trying to get a general feel for the organization. And I mean, I like to think that the RFP is one of the most important things that we do because it really opens the door for this application, but that definitely leads into the review process, which is a little bit more intense.
Yeah, so this year we had about 6 different groups apply for a grant, and because of Delta Dental's additional funding, we had more money to give, so a bit of a heavier decision to make. So essentially what we do from that point is we read through all of the applications, and at the beginning of the RFP, we state like what we are attempting to achieve with, like, if we fund you, this is what we hope you'll do with that. And we look through all the applications, and then we select a few that we feel tailored more towards our goals, and then we give those people an interview. And throughout the interview process, we essentially just try to judge on, if we gave you this funding, what would you do with it? How would that impact the community? How is it directly related to our topic? and like how can uVoice students get involved, lots of that stuff. And then from the interviews, we come to one of the most difficult parts of the year is making a funding decision. And so we don't have to give all of our funds to one organization. We can choose to split it between multiple. And that is what we ended up doing this year. And at the end of it all, we lead to the grant presentation.
Which is my favorite part of the year because it is so much fun to bring together all these different members of our community who are all interested in seeing what we've done that year, and it's really a final hurrah, I guess, for our cycle because we present the actual money, the check, the grant to the organizations that we choose, and we make a big deal out of it, and there's speeches, there's lots of applause. It's a really great time. It's very impactful. You can see that meaningful difference being made.
Yeah. And so the grant presentation essentially concludes our grant making cycle of that year, but some students on the board stay on during the summer to finish what we call a white paper. So essentially what that does is we're letting the community know in about 2 pages what we did during the year. We teach them more about our topic, about why we chose to fund the grants that we did, and what we learned from that. And so in a white paper is a very informative way for people to learn more about uVoice, for them to learn more about, in this case, human trafficking, and essentially why we as youth saw this as a pertinent issue and why it needed to be discussed.
Great job, guys. So uVoice is a unique program at Community Youth Concepts because it's philanthropy focused, but I would also say that it's unique because students who are involved in uVoice get a lot of leadership development opportunities. I would say that's one thing that our group does well, and one thing that we really wanted to share with you all today when it comes to best practices in youth development. So Paige and Meghna are going to talk through some of the leadership opportunities that they've received on the board, and then we'll end with how that has impacted them. So Meghna, do you want to talk a little bit about what being co-chair of uVoice means?
Yeah. So essentially, so Paige and I are co-chairs, so we divide up a lot of duties, but uVoice meets every 2 weeks, and Paige, Alicia, and I will meet like during the middle week, and we'll plan the meeting out. We'll essentially figure out what we have to do throughout this meeting in order to keep our board on track throughout the whole year. And we have a very small group, like we talked about earlier. It can only be a maximum of 15 kids. And so we get to know our students pretty well. We form friendships with them. So I think that helps make the co-chair position a lot easier because we know our audience, we know what works best, we know what gets us off track. And so that's something that really helps us during our executive board meetings, essentially, to figure out what to do. And we also plan the timeline for the year. We sit down at the beginning of the year in August, and we're like, we need to get these things done. We need to have like a certain amount, because we are high school students, and obviously we still have school on top of things. So we try to plan things around breaks and yeah.
So that co-chair system has worked super great in the past couple of years. I know we originally had just one president, really good friend of mine, Jordan George. She was the president my sophomore year, I guess. And I know that it was a lot of responsibility for one person to take on, and we decided to transition to the co-chair. But this year we have about 3 other students and myself interested in that position. So we are going to be making another transition to an executive committee, which ours will look a little different than your traditional president, vice president, treasury secretary. Right? That's the traditional executive committee. So we're looking at a marketing chair, some kind of communications chair, and then 2 co-chairs, like co-presidents, I guess. So at this point, we're just trying to redefine what those positions will look like. It's very exciting, a new age for our group. And looking forward, I think it's going to make a really great difference in the leadership opportunities and the structure of the board. We have a lot. We had a lot of responsibilities this year, and I know the communication is one aspect that we've been trying to figure out, whether email or text, or we started using Remind this year. So I think breaking up those responsibilities will be a really great step in the right direction for us.
And so while Paige and I do a lot with uVoice, we've also, because of uVoice, gotten the opportunity to do things outside of CYC, which is great. And with the Mid-Iowa Health Foundation funding us, we've made a lot of friendships with that board, and they're very good about pushing us towards other leadership opportunities. So one thing Paige and I got to do this year with some other members on our board is work on Mind Matters at the Science Center. So we've done mental health in past years for a topic, and so it's well known that we're very interested in that, and that the majority of our board members are really passionate about mental health. And so we got to help plan a youth conference at this exhibit, and we essentially got to put together breakout groups to really start a conversation about mental health within youth around the area. We had a lot of kids come from outside of the Des Moines area as well. So that was a very rewarding experience, especially since mental health is probably one of our biggest loves. And so that's just one example of things we do outside of uVoice.
Another opportunity that uVoice has given us to reach out to some of the higher ups in our community is our funders. We have two really, really great organizations that provide us with guidance and obviously the funding for our grant. So Delta Dental and Mid-Iowa Health Foundation, a lot of the times we'll go and we'll make presentations to them just about our progress, or I know before we received the Delta grant, we presented to them, and they are so generous when it comes to giving us advice and guidance along our cycle. We have attended some of the Mid-Iowa Health Foundation board meetings and gotten a little taste of what that's like. So they've been really great support systems for us along the way.
Okay, and so I know we talked about the Youth Philanthropy Conference earlier, and so that's something that really starts off uVoice. That's how we introduce people to the other groups, and it's a very fun process for us. So this year, we got asked to do a breakout session there, and essentially with that, so uVoice is a very unique philanthropy board, and because of a small group and the amount of funding we get, we have a lot of opportunities that some other groups might not have, or they're very young and might not have gotten to that point. So I think this breakout session will be a really great way for us to establish ourselves within other philanthropy groups in the state, and also kind of just let people know what we do and why we might be different from typical philanthropy boards that you normally see.
And I think that one thing that I've really learned as a facilitator is how important it is to include youth in every stage of both program planning, implementation, and expansion. Like Paige and Meghna talked about, like they did the presentation to Delta Dental when we asked for more funding. It wasn't me who did that, or our executive director at CYC. Like, it was the students who wrote the application and did the presentation. And so it's really inspiring for me to see when you encourage youth and give them opportunities to lead and to shine. Very often they'll rise to the occasion. So I take it as a challenge as a facilitator to be thinking creatively of those opportunities that we can give our youth. So ladies, if you wouldn't mind to end our presentation, do you want to share a little bit about the impact that being part of the board has made, and especially why you think being given youth leadership opportunities will help you in the future?
So I'll start. Throughout uVoice and all the leadership opportunities I've gotten, I've really gotten a chance to hone my public speaking skills and get better at thinking on my feet, which was very useful this year in college applications, with like interviews and such. And also, uVoice is just such a unique concept, and not a lot of people have any idea about it. And so I think telling people that I'm part of such an amazing group is really rewarding, and I enjoy every single week seeing my friends. And I also enjoy so in like over the past years, I've been one of the younger members on the board. It's been mostly seniors, but this year we had all of those seniors graduate, and there was just me, another senior, and then a lot of sophomores and juniors. So I think it's also really fun to watch them grow and also help them with things outside of uVoice as well. And I think uVoice gave me a really good support system. Like, I know I can ask anybody for help with anything, and we all have such varied interests and strong suits that it's just very diverse in that way, and I love my board.
Going along with what Meghna said, when I started on uVoice, I was the only freshman on the board. I was the youngest member. It was, I don't think we had a full board at the time.
I don't think we did.
But there were maybe 12 or 13 students, and they were all upperclassmen, and I was very nervous. I had heard about it through a friend of a friend, and it sounded like something I was interested in, and being the quietest, youngest at the table has definitely not been my path for the past year. I have opened up so much about sharing my passion with other people through this process. I feel like I've grown a lot as a person, and again, like as a public speaker, but just figuring out what I'm really interested in and how I can make a difference in that has been such a huge advantage of such a tight-knit board like this. We're not even like just a board at this point. We're a family. We have like outings and
We have a Christmas party.
But yeah, it's just we've grown up and we've grown together, and it's been so incredible watching all these people around me doing incredible things and knowing that I'm a part of that.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. So I know we weren't able to do this webinar live, and I apologize. That's because of my schedule. But Brittany, do you have any questions for us that you think other 21st century coordinators might have?
Yeah, so I did write down a few, and then thank you for putting your contact information up here, because this will be shared within our network and posted on our website. So if our grantees have questions, I'll have them reach out to you.
Perfect.
Or if they have questions for the students too, I'm sure you'll get them connected.
I can definitely do that.
Great, but just some questions I thought about that some of the network members might want to know. So how did you get this started? And maybe this is more of a question for you, Alicia. What was that process like?
Yeah, so I was not at CYC when the board started, but what I know is that Mid-Iowa Health Foundation and Community Youth Concepts were both really interested in getting youth voice involved in decisions that were being made about the health of our children and youth in our community. So the partnership first started out as a series of focus groups. So Community Youth concepts, would conduct focus groups around kind of the central Iowa area to hear from youth. What are your barriers to accessing health? What do you feel like is missing? What do you really care about that you wish adults cared about in the same way that you do? And so from those focus groups, I think together they made the decision of establishing a philanthropy board. So not only are we hearing from youth this one time in place, but youth will have a voice in funding that's being spent right here in central Iowa. And so that was in 2013. So I started in 2016. I came on a little bit later.
And then maybe you said this and I missed it, but how did Delta Dental get involved? Did you reach out to them?
So that was thankfully a connection that the Mid-Iowa Health Foundation made for us. I think they knew that Delta Dental was interested in some new funding opportunities and that we might be a good fit, so they encouraged us to apply, and we had the students work on the grant application, and we planned the presentation, and they got to go into the boardroom with their grant making committee and did a great job. Cool. It was amazing. Positive feedback, and really, I think it's fun for funders too to hear from students. It's not something that you get to experience every day.
Wake up for them, a little different, I'm sure. Well, I think that just shows the power of community partners, which we're always encouraging our programs across the state to get connected to community partners to help create these really innovative programs like uVoice. So once the program is established, what do you do to get the youth involved? How do you reach out to them and get them interested in the program? Maybe that's the question for you. And then for you two, Meghna and Paige, how did you get involved in this? Was it like a flyer, a friend of a friend? What were some of the recruitment methods you guys used?
Start, and I can kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah. I definitely think a lot of our board members come from like people we've known. Like I started on the board because the chair 2 years ago, her family and my family were very close friends, and so as she was graduating, she was like, "You have to join. Like you'll have so much fun." And I know some of the students on this year's board and coming next year's board, I tell everybody about uVoice, and I'm kind of like, this is how I spend my time, and I love it. And so I think that really brings younger students in, especially knowing that older students do something that they like enjoy so much and is so impactful in their lives. I think that really brings people in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I mentioned, I heard about it from my little sister's friend's mom who convinced me to apply. And that first meeting with Alicia, we were both kind of like, yeah, we're new.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
We're new at the same time.
But then after that, it's really word of mouth. We love it. Yeah. Meghna and I have advocated so much for this group. It's something that we're really passionate about, and we love sharing that with other friends and just members of our community. I know we have flyers, but I think word of mouth is really
the best way.
Yeah.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that. I go to a lot of like meet the teacher nights at the beginning of the school year, or as other community partners are having big events or neighborhood events, I'll table at those to let people know. But word of mouth is definitely the most popular. And I usually make presentations to community youth concepts other groups. We do before and after school programs and in school programs now at several schools in the metro. So I'll usually visit once a semester, once a year, and tell those students about uVoice, how to get involved. So we try a lot of different things, but I think you're right. Word of mouth is definitely the most effective.
I know we have a couple of students who joined because some other kids from their school were involved. They were all a friend group in one, and then the rest of them joined. There are a couple of students that were involved in other CYC programs that split their time and are doing great and love being involved in both. And we're just so glad to have such passionate students.
Yeah, so cool. And then I think my final question, you've talked about how this program has affected you and your growth, but has it affected your aspirations for your future, what you want to study in college, what you want to be when you grow up?
I mean, so I'll start. So I think topic last year, mental health. I do a lot of work with mental health outside of uVoice as well, and so it kind of solidified what I wanted to do. Like, I'm planning to go into college right now with a double major in neuroscience and psychology. So it's definitely impacted my future career choices. But I also think what I knew about mental